Hi there, Rabbi. It's time for yet another episode in our latest series, The Ten Commandments, and what's going on with those guys. Today, we are going to discuss Thou shalt not murder. This is the same weekend that somebody took a shot at a well known presidential candidate and wound up killing an innocent bystander in the process. Where is the wisdom in all this?
Let's start with the commandment and something many people fail to do, both religious leaders, my Christian colleagues, and Jewish colleagues and politicians, is not going to an original or good source. The Ten Commandments are in the Bible. They're in the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible. One can look at the Hebrew, the original. And it says, thou shalt not murder. That's a commandment. And it's a disservice to use a mistranslation and say, thou shalt not kill. Now, how did that happen? Purely by accident. When St. Jerome translated the Hebrew into Latin, into the Vulgate, he chose a common Latin word. He didn't choose the word for murder. He chose a word that translates as kill, but it was used in the vernacular to mean murder. So rather than going back to the original Hebrew, which would solve the problem, it's pure and simple. The Hebrew says murder means killing with malice of forethought and malicious intent. You stay in ambush and you shoot. The event that you're talking about would have been murder if the presidential candidate wasn't just wounded, because the person that shot with malicious intent and malice aforethought. The commandment, Joe, is pure and simple. Murder has no place in society because it just fosters more murdering. It fosters violence. And his violating the commandment was the result of his thinking that he had no choice. He was disenfranchised, perhaps. He was angry, perhaps. But more important than that, when he watched the news, when he saw what was going on in our country, he saw that hate and murder was acceptable, and he just jumped on the bandwagon and decided to, and plotted to, with malice aforethought and malicious intent. His goal was to murder a presidential candidate. A real distinction between killing becomes necessary in war, in combat. Our country's invaded. The Ukraine is being invaded by another nation, and they have absolutely the right to kill the enemy that's coming into their country. So we're not talking about this individual taking it on oneself to murder another person because they did something I didn't like, or they professed something I didn't like. There's killing in one setting, but murder stands alone as meaning I'm looking for this person and I'm going to take their life away for an imagined or real injustice that was done to me.
Well, and of course, our conversation here isn't going to resolve all the multitude of issues and ways you could slice this onion. There are whole countries that condone, by their inherent legal system, killing people because of the way they dress or the things that they do, or they ate the wrong thing at the wrong time. And they justify those by their versions of scripture. So it's not as simple as saying you can murder, but you can't kill. What is our line in the sand here?
So rather than using a flawed translation or a translation that's an ulterior motive, go back to the original. Should be our starting point. You're right, there's ways to slice the onion, but if we're going to do it, we have to go to the original text. What did Muhammad say? What did Jesus say? What was the going on with the Ten Commandments? What was the original Hebrew, the original Greek, the original Arabic? And that's where I find the onion getting sliced that's so damaging, because people are not using original translations. They're using translations of their convenience or mistranslations to justify bad behavior. And that's what I want to leave us with.
Well, I might say it's not so much translation as interpretation, because everybody seems to hear what they want to hear. But thank you as always, Rabbi. Your wisdom is my only translation in terms of what to do in situations like this.
I have no problem with discussing someone's interpretation of the text, but let's look at the original text. And that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about interpretation, Joe. I'm talking about there are different ways to interpret Holy Scripture, but let's start with the actual Scripture.